Hey guys, it is Melissa and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Melissa Ellen and I do true crime videos. My intention is to raise awareness and that's really what I'm focused on. And a lot of things have been on my mind lately and I saw this Twitter trend was going wild in regards to the Rodney Reed case. Now, of course, I knew a little bit about this case. Can I say that I'm an expert in any way? Absolutely not. I've known the basics of it as many of you have. What got me, I'm just going to jump right into this, guys, is that there are so many people jumping on a bandwagon. I'm totally fine with that. In this situation, I'm cool because the awareness that we're raising is pushing people to sign a petition so that we can get answers. And I want to be clear about that, guys. We are not signing a petition saying that we truly believe in our heart of hearts that Rodney Reed is 100% innocent and should be freed tomorrow. I'm sorry, I don't feel that way. Do I have a very, very strong opinion that Rodney Reed possibly is absolutely innocent and he needs a second trial? 100%. Okay, I just do. I have questions about it. My kids keep laughing at me lately. Everything is, I have questions. I have questions. I don't know how many times a day I say that. When the kids come home and they tell me something, these are the kids that they told me about it on Twitter. They're like, hey, is that guy innocent? And I'm like, I don't know if he's innocent. They're like, well, do we sign it because we think he's innocent? And I was like, whoa. I'm not going to tell you guys if I think he's innocent because then you're going to take that as like word and go sign something you don't know. So, of course, I tell the kids, we're going to look into it before you sign anything and get to know a little bit more. But in this situation, this petition is very clearly to argue that a second trial needs to happen because there is some clear DNA evidence that has not even been considered. Well, it's been considered. They've denied it. They say that it's old, that it can't be tested, but they haven't tested it, so who knows? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I've seen some stuff being done. That's the problem, okay? There is questions in this case. There is doubt. What's this world run on? Reasonable doubt, okay? So I am not going to argue whether or not the death penalty is correct or not. Absolutely not, because I believe that there are some people that I have no problem with you putting in the death penalty. In fact, Texas, slow down. If you guys just want to put someone, we'll give you some names. We know some people out there that, need to be, fast tracked through. There is no reason this man has been on death row for 21 years. And there is a mass push. The Innocence Project is involved. Dr. Phil did 2 episodes on it. There is a documentary on top of the countless numbers of amazing reporters and people and YouTubers that are pushing. And the celebrities, you've got Kim K and Rihanna and Oprah and I think I saw LL Cool J was in there. I mean, you've got people that are involved in pushing, and this man's going to be executed in a couple days. Okay? It's going to be executed in a couple days, and there is a mass outcry saying, whoa. Not only are we pissed because you haven't done a good enough job yet, because there are things that the examiners, medical examiners, the experts have recanted their statements. His friends have come forward and recanted what they said. Witnesses have come forward and said and cooperated other sides of the story. It is insane. It's not just a couple little things. And then the biggest thing of all is there is a box of evidence sitting there that's never been tested. I don't know. So it's crazy. There is no reason for this man to be executed in a couple of days with this many questions out there. And it pisses me off beyond belief, okay? Because personally, I don't quite have a problem with parts of the death penalty. I hear that the death penalty, actually executing someone, is way more expensive than actually housing them long term. So I've heard that scenario. I don't really care. My point is there are some people in this world that I don't think they need to be sitting in a jail cell enjoying their life. And I know that it's, sad and lonely, but they get fan mail and crap and whatever. So I'm not going to debate the death penalty. The reason I don't even believe in the death penalty currently is because of cases like this. And if you want people to support the death penalty and you want to get more people to stop fighting you, you're always going to have people who, no matter what, they 100% do not believe in it. And that's good. I believe we are always supposed to have people on both sides. But your people who kind of waver are never going to consider wavering to your side because of crap like this. Because you're setting a bad name for something that people believe in. Isn't that crazy? I will, like, I'm not even a big fan of the death penalty, but I will advocate for you to do the right thing in order to support your cause, because you should do the right thing for your cause if you want people to support you. This is the wrong thing. You are 100% taking the death penalty back like 100 years. Like, why don't you just go back to how it was? Anyways, I will not sit and go on this. Let me give you guys a quick scenario of this case. What we have. This is 1996 in Texas. We have a beautiful white woman, and she is engaged to a white police officer. Yep, we're going to say black and white a lot because we have to, because this case, this matters, okay? It is without a doubt a huge part of this case. And apparently, she might have been having a little side affair with a black man by the name of Rodney Reed. Okay. So, we're going to cover this case. I am going to apologize to you guys now. This is not my normal thorough research. It is not going to be as detailed. There's not going to be as many photos, pop-ups, corrections. I'm getting it out to you guys as fast as I can. There is no time to wait. I'm getting this up tonight. I don't even know when it'll be done, but it's going up tonight because this is important. I need you guys to look at this. I need you to consider signing the petition. I would never, ever, I always tell people, take a look and decide if it's right for you. I'm kind of saying, please go sign it. Just please go sign it, because all you're pushing for is a chance to have a second trial to get answers. Just listen to the story that I'm going to present to you guys. Tell me down below if I gave you enough information to make you at least want to sign it, so that we can do a really thorough, like a detailed video. Because what'll break my heart is if a week and a half from now, I announce to you guys, I'm sorry, there will be no full video because he's gone and we don't get a chance to dig into this, because what's the point now? You know what I mean? It's done. It's over. They executed a man. It'd be so amazing in a couple weeks to be like, hey guys, we're going to do a full series because they've stayed the execution, and we're going to talk about this case in detail because it's very intriguing on an intrigue level. But it's such a huge deal to figure out, is this guy innocent or not? So thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate you guys being here with me. Again, I apologize if I make a mistake. I always usually make some sort of weird mistake, but like, just please understand that I'm just getting you guys the information, and I just want to intrigue you enough to go and sign the petition so that there can be a second trial, so that this man is not put to death too soon. I'm not saying he should be. I don't know. I want to have that conversation with you guys. So I really hope that we get to. So please, the petition will be first. Then I will link the amazing, amazing resources that I used to give you guys this information so you guys can dig in. So again, thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart, and let's jump right into this video. Okay, let me give you guys a quick overview of what this case hinges on. And this is why it's really important to know what's going on. We have a beautiful white woman who is 19 years old that is found apparently raped and murdered. There are two suspects in the case. You have her fiance, who is a white police officer, and you have a possible lover who is a black man. And there is confusion and a lot of non-cooperation as to whether or not she had actually been having a relationship with this black man. And there is question about whether or not she could have possibly had a consensual sexual encounter with him prior to this. Now, the black man has a history of being accused of rape by, I believe it was 5 separate cases. One was immediately dropped, one was thrown out, 3 of them didn't go, and then 2 of them ended up getting dropped after he was charged in this case. Regardless, all 5 of them, nothing came of them. He was never convicted of any of those charges. The white police officer has been accused at least twice of kidnapping and rape. And on one of those charges, he actually pled guilty and served 10 years in prison after his fiance was raped and murdered. You have questions, right? Well, who did it? Okay, what I can tell you is that the black man is on death row and is going to be executed in a week. You have questions, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. And That's what bothers me the most, is that there's just so many questions. But the only thing I can tell you is that it's done, it's over, he's being executed. But there's questions. Like, yes, I'm serious. This man, her fiance, was a suspect in the case. There was evidence that leads to him. There is questions about the timeline and his character, involving the fact that he literally did these things for sure. Absolutely. Without a doubt, you pled guilty. You did it at least one time. And then you have this man over here who's been accused, but nothing has ever came of it. So I want to have more questions. So there was DNA found. So let's actually go through the timeline now that I've given you my overview of why I decided I need to talk to you guys about this. And I'm going to be very clear. I had to do this kind of quickly because of the fact that the execution date is fast approaching. So I apologize, as I've seen many other YouTubers had to do. We apologize. We don't have enough time to do the same amount of research we would normally do. I'm going to make some pronunciation, whatever, just roll with me, okay? This is important that we talk about it. So Stacey Stites was a 19-year-old, and she lived in Texas. And she was working at a grocery store, and she was engaged to Jimmy Fennell. Jimmy Fennell was a police officer in the city that they lived in. Now, she worked at this grocery store, and there were reports from her family. I want to be very clear. I apologize to her family. I'm so sorry for this. This is horrible, because her family truly believes that Rodney Reed, the black man involved, is 100%. That sounds so weird. By the way, I just have to point this out because we are talking 1996, and I graduated high school in 97. I know what the times were like. I know that I was very fortunate to live where I lived, and that wasn't as big of an issue. But yes, I'm very aware. I grew up in some prior younger, I can't even imagine. This is Texas. I know I did not want to be there during this time. Cool. So I need to make sure that we know that that is an issue. It is not even a question of whether or not this was an issue. This is a flat out issue of black and white. And so we can't just skirt around this one because it's confirmed an issue to me. So I apologize to her family because I know that this is very difficult for them because they don't want this reopened. And if this were not for the fact that there is a possible injustice to another human being, I completely understand. If this was just a question of some sort of insurance or just something that didn't involve a person and people were just being nosy to be nosy, then I feel that that is just wrong and I would feel horrible. But I'm sorry, this is another human being who is just possibly being wronged. And they could be murdered because the state doesn't do a good enough job. And on top of that is the what if. What if the family is wrong and that Jimmy Fennell is really responsible and they're supporting him? So I'm so sorry for them because that's so hard. And if everyone ends up being wrong and Rodney Reed really is responsible, I'm so sorry. But just know that everyone has to do this because you have to do the right thing. And if we want the death penalty to be an option, we have to do it right. And we cannot leave this many people questioning because the death penalty will just become more questionable to people. So my apologies to her family. Okay, so Stacey meets Jimmy. She's working at a grocery store. By all accounts, she's very happy. Her family says that she was in love. She was excited for the upcoming wedding. She was stoked about a ring. I mean, everything was just wonderful. She was so happy. And according to her mother, Stacey had been driving her mother's car to work. But her work was 35 miles away. And so her mom's car had been giving her some trouble. And so she was kind of occasionally, but very rarely up to this point, had been driving Jimmy's red pickup truck to work. But that was very rare and a very new thing to happen. According to her mother, the plan is that Jimmy was going to get up in the morning and drive Stacey to work, come back home, spend his day doing whatever, and then drive back to Stacey's work when she got off to pick her up so that the two of them could run errands to look for wedding things. That is not what actually happened. According to Jimmy, the night before they were talking and they decided that she would just go ahead and take Jimmy's truck to work and that he was going to have her mother drive him to her work. again, as everyone brought this up, and I did watch Stephanie Harlow's video was just really amazing. She does really good work, and her research is really good. I watched the entire Innocence Project, the documentary, the Dr. Phil. So this got brought up a lot, and the fact that, it is kind of interesting that if the whole purpose for her driving Jimmy's truck is because her mother's car wasn't reliable to make that 35-mile drive, then how was he going to drive it later? But maybe he was going to work on it, or he had kind of a plan. I don't know, but that's what he said. So at 5:30 that morning, there was I'm sorry, I don't remember if it was 5:30 or 6:30. A phone call came into her mother saying that Stacey had not arrived to work. And they were concerned if knew where she was. So Stacey's mother, obviously very worried, immediately calls Jimmy to see if maybe Stacey stayed home from work that day. Jimmy obviously is very worried as well, and is like, no, she took my truck. Now he is a police officer. He immediately calls in and puts in an APB on his vehicle. Now an hour prior to the APB, a officer in that area where the truck was found at a high school, abandoned. And an officer who was driving by saw the vehicle and thought, that's really weird. It's, 4:30 in the morning. It's at a high school. There's no one around, and ran the plates. He actually called in the plates to the dispatcher to check the plates. I kind of find it weird. I mean, this is like not the biggest cities of Texas. I know it's like 35 miles away, so it is two different departments, but like how they didn't see his name and recognize his name, or I mean, I know now like a lot of things like are tagged. So like if you run a police officer's license plates that comes back confidential or flagged, maybe it didn't in 1996. So it ends up linking together, and they realize that Jimmy's truck is actually the truck that's been abandoned at the high school. So they all rush over there, and that's where things start to get concerning. Okay, this is where things in the investigation that cause people to pause. And the reason that people are saying, okay, fine, possible, but everything that happened in this part of the investigation got really muddy and wasn't handled quite properly and needs to be looked at again. Here's what I do. I have a process. When I want to look into a case, I just let it run in the background of my day. And so I just had these videos on, and I've been listening to them for a day and a half. I've been listening to podcasts. I've been listening to all kinds of information on this case. And then what I normally do is that I take all the information that I absorbed and I start writing it out, and then I fact checked everything, and then I go back in and add the details. We stopped at the point where I just listened to everything and I wrote some notes. So I apologize again if it's not perfect. I keep getting myself thrown off because I am so used to doing such detailed research and trying not to make mistakes. And this time I'm just giving you guys the gist. And so I keep stopping myself because I was like, wait, what's that person's name? And how do I say this? And I apologize, guys. So we're just going to make this work. So the officer that took lead on the investigation was Officer Ed Samela. And Ed was in charge of the investigation, but there was concerns about the way that he handled it. For example, there is questions about the fact that they questioned her fiance, Jimmy, but then they took Jimmy to the truck, which I guess would make sense because at this point she's missing. And so they want him to look into the truck and see if he notices anything out of place. He does notice some things. Her red apron that she wore to work was there. There were pieces of a plastic cup that she typically had with her to go to work every day for water or something. There was also some sort of a white gooey substance in the vehicle on so you have a pickup truck and down on the floorboard how it humps up. So there was some there. There was some on the passenger floorboard. One of her earrings was there. One of her shoes was there, and part of a belt that was believed to belong to her. So they kind of pointed out some things. We know that there was some testing done of the truck because we know that fingerprints were examined, and we know that some of the articles from the vehicle were removed. Ed stayed with the vehicle. In fact, the vehicle was then transported down to the department for a forensic unit from another county to come in and test it. A whole lab was going to come and test the truck. They arrived there to test the truck, and that's when her body is discovered by someone else. A couple actually, or a man actually found her, and they then left the truck, the crime scene and Ed, to go to where Stacey's body was found to handle that crime scene. I know that the vehicle was at least somewhat looked at because there are photos that I saw in the documentary, which I'm going to link below. By the way, there's not going to be a lot of photos in this one. Okay, just there's not. So a lot of them are going to be in the documentaries because it just takes too long to add them in. So I saw photos of them at the vehicle with the doors open, police officers standing there with papers. Like they're obviously checking it out. But here's what we know. The crime scene unit went to the crime scene and they were there for a very long time. They then returned back and there is evidence from a seller that the vehicle was sold the next day by Jimmy, which means that the vehicle had to be looked at quickly, examined, tested, returned to Jimmy the next day, and he sold it the next day. I mean, if that doesn't make you go, what? I get it. I have heard of many, many people that when their vehicle was involved in the harm of their loved one, that they don't touch that vehicle again. They never get in it. They never drive it. They sell it. They give it away. They do anything. I find it very concerning that literally the next day you're at a car lot trading it in. I mean, that just seems a little like quick. In 1996, I was in high school. I knew about DNA. I knew about forensic testing. Like everyone knew it was around. So if you were concerned that your loved one had just been murdered by an unknown person at this point, they have absolutely no idea. And you also know you're a suspect because you've been questioned and you're a police officer. So you know you're a suspect. You know that he's a police officer. Why did that escape my brain for a second? He knows that there could be evidence in there, but he sells it the next day. There was some paperwork that says that he did not get the vehicle back for 4 days, but that absolutely contradicts the selling transfer paperwork with the car lot. Whatever, even if it was 4 days, that's crazy to me. Why was that vehicle returned? Everyone knows that these vehicles, if you bump a curb and they tow your car to the impound, it's going to take you 72 hours just to get it back. And that's like bumping a curb. I can't. And I know that they held cars. I know that they did back then. Absolutely. Like this is not like, I mean, it's 20 years ago, but it's not. It's more than 20 years, huh? 23. Ouch. It's been a while. So what was in the car? Was it tested? That white gooey substance? Absolutely not. There are two possibilities of, well, I'm sure there's more, but I mean, two strong possibilities of what that fluid was. Obviously, a male substance, of course, that is what everyone is really considering that is what it could have been. That would make sense because if she was raped, then there would be seminal fluid left in the vehicle possibly. So, okay. There's also something that a lot of us probably didn't know, but if a person is deceased and they are left, so example, if she had been killed and then she was put into the vehicle, which is why maybe her earring was on the floorboard, her shoe, part of her belt, if that had happened, then apparently the body will actually secrete a fluid, an ooze of sort. I'm so sorry. You know what really bothers me? It's just so hard to say this because this is a woman and this happened to her and we have to talk about this and we have to talk about this because this man may or may not have done it and we need to know. Not we. Her family needs to know. The justice system needs to know and he needs to know and his family needs to know. And if the other guy's innocent or guilty, they need to know. So we have to push so that these people get these answers. So that is a possibility of what the fluid could have been. The problem is not tested. I know that sounds the craziest thing. We hear about these insane forensic testing that they do. And so I know that they can't do all of those testing everywhere, but it never dawns me that they're not going to collect the evidence. That's crazy. So the vehicle's returned. They don't test it. We have no idea. She is found face up. She does have shirt and pants, one shoe. Her underwear seemed to be disturbed. It does look like she had been messed with and disturbed, and she had been strangled to death. At the scene, they did find some cans of beer. They did find the other part of her belt. Now, police, here's what we do know. They did do fingerprints on the truck because we know that because Stacey and Jimmy's truck fingerprints were on the truck and Rodney's were not. Now, you're wanting to know, who's the Rodney guy? How did he come into this? Now, remember, Rodney had been accused prior of sexual assaults. And even though those charges had never gone through or had been dropped or dismissed, his DNA was in the system. Okay. See, remember, DNA was in the system. They were collecting DNA from people. So this was absolutely a time where DNA wasn't as advanced as it is now. They were collecting DNA. This was absolutely a time where it would have been completely normal to collect that fluid, check the DNA, everything. I'm so flabbergasted that they didn't do this. It did appear from the evidence that she had been strangled by that belt. Now, it's interesting because part of the belt was in the truck and part of the belt was at the crime scene. So it makes you think that either she was killed at the truck or they only took part of it. Kind of curious, correct? So, of course, the question is, well, whose DNA was on the belt? Because the belt, if that was what was used to strangle her, then there's a good chance that the killer's DNA is on the belt. Belt hasn't been tested. The belt was never tested. And they want to test the belt. But now, since the belt apparently hasn't been stored properly, they are not testing the belt. There is a big push. They need to test the belt anyways. Why not? How in the world can you put a man to death and not take a minute to test the evidence? Just test it, try. And do they not watch Forensic Files? Because I've seen them miraculously find things they never thought they could find. It is a whole new world of the possibilities. At least test it. Why not? The amount of money and time they spend responding to say no, just do it. Just do it really quick. So that's one thing that's really frustrating. Just freaking do the test. I'm sure one of these celebrities would even be like, okay, cool, I'll just write the check. I'll do it for you. Like, come on, just test it. So upon examining when the autopsy was done of Stacey, this is where Rodney came into play. His DNA was found inside of her, a very small amount of spermicidal head cell. I don't know the word, and I'm going to mess it up. I keep saying it wrong. So there was a very small amount of sperm inside of Stacey, and that sperm belonged to Rodney. That sperm would confirm that they had sexual contact within like a 26-hour period, which would fit into the timeline of her death. There are some forensics that have come forward saying, no, it would have happened before, it would have happened, whatever, it happened, okay? So then the question to Rodney is, when and why? Tell us the story of how you had contact with Stacey. Originally at the time when he was interviewed, Rodney denied even knowing Stacey. Huge, huge red flag and a big mistake on his part. It's a hard thing to get around because he initially 100% denied even knowing her. Well, you can't deny it because you kind of know her. Your DNA is not just on her, it's in her. You know her, you touched her, you were with her. Eventually, Rodney confessed that he lied, that he absolutely knew her, and that he had been having a sexual affair with her for a year and a half. Now, of course, investigators are like, bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Everyone's saying bullshit. What made it very difficult is that Rodney did have corroboration of his contact with Stacey. His corroboration was mainly his family and friends, okay? Everyone in her family was like, absolutely not. She did not know him. That was not happening. She was happily in love with her fiance. Nobody knew about Rodney. So that makes it very, very, very difficult, despite the fact that members of his family didn't seem to be just wanting to help him. They seemed to be completely able to give details and facts. She'd been to their home. They had seen him out and about, that they had had tons of interaction, and that they were absolutely sure that something was going on between them, even though they didn't actually say something was going on, but they were friends, but they knew something was going on between them. So that evidence was not used because it wasn't believed. I mean, it was used, but that evidence was obviously not believed because it was just his family, and you did have a man who had been previously accused of other sexual crimes. You also have, it's Texas, and this is a black man, and this is a white woman. So I was very fortunate in this time in my high school. This was absolutely normal. Whatever, everyone was dating everybody, and it was fine, and nobody cared. But I was really, really well aware of the divide. just prior, my 7th grade, so we're just it'd be 4 years before this happened, I went to a junior high that was 100% divided. It didn't matter who your friends were because they couldn't be your friends at school. You had to stay in your section. It's during the Rodney King trials, everything. So I know what it's like right in that time. And I'm pretty sure that that's how Texas was. And I can't imagine that she would want to tell everyone. If there's even a chance that her family had made her feel uncomfortable to tell them that, then this being a secret makes total sense. Again, I'm not saying it is because I don't know for sure. But what I can tell you is that years later, a coworker of her who has no relation to the family and no relation to his family or to anyone involved, okay, came forward and said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you guys were using that information, the fact that nobody believed she was hanging out or sleeping with Rodney, as evidence in the case. And so I haven't come forward because I didn't want to have problems. I lived in the area. I didn't want to have any issues, but I absolutely know for sure that Stacey was sleeping with Rodney. She told me. She said that she remembers a very distinct conversation in which Stacey was showing her engagement ring, and that she told her, yeah, I'm not really that happy because I'm actually sleeping with this black guy named Rodney. And that was making her happy. And the coworkers seemed to be very clear that, yeah, we weren't friends that hung out all the time. We were like lunch coworkers. We worked at the same place and we just started chatting a lot at work. We had like lunch breaks together and I was just like a confidant. And that makes sense to me. I have people, they become like your work best friend and then you don't work there anymore and you never hear from them again. So hi to any of my friends from before. I still love you. We just don't work together anymore. But I get that. People do that. And so she says, yeah. And the only reason I didn't say anything is that I did not know that that was such a big deal because I knew that they were having an affair. So I don't know. But what I do know is that's enough to question having a second trial, right? Like, when it all starts to culminate together. So let's talk about this fiance because there is a avenue of corruption. Again, if you guys really, 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 really want to dig, I'm linking below for you the detailed details. Okay, so according to Jimmy, the night before they sat up and they had the conversation about him driving her to work or her driving to work, and they decided that she was going to drive herself to work. They had forgotten to tell her mother that. That's why she didn't know what the situation was. Apparently her mother lived right in the same apartment complex, so they were very, very close. Again, that's a big part of it too, because she was very close with her mother. They lived in the same apartment complex. She was using her mother's car. Her mother knew a lot about what was going on in her life. So I can imagine to her mother, she's very confused by this because if she really was having this secret affair, it's very hard for her to believe because she didn't know anything about it. So they go to bed. Well, actually, eventually Stacey goes to bed. I believe he said around 8:30. He stays up for a while. Eventually he goes to bed, and that he does not know when she left, but it would make sense for her to normally have gotten up around 2:30 and leaving the house between 3 and 3:15 in the morning to make it to work. So according to him, he had been home with her the entire night and no one else. Now, later on, people came forward and said that's not possible because he was part of a group, a baseball, coaching, whatever, and that they had went out drinking that night. And so there was no way that he was home with her because they went out drinking. So kind of messing with the timeline. So then the conversation about the truck and everything lends to start to add some questions that need to be answered. Was it possible that he wasn't home, that he was actually out drinking, and then he came home and something happened? When her body was found, there were beer cans next to her. Now, one of the beer cans tested with her DNA. One had Jimmy's DNA. And let me look this one up because this one I want to make sure I don't mess up. All right, I'm having trouble finding this, but I know that all right. There were 2 beer cans that were found next to her. And I thought I saw or heard that there was possibly Jimmy and Stacey's and someone else's fingerprints or DNA on those cans. And the other person would have been Ed, the detective. So Here's what I can tell you. It gets really weird because there was someone who said that no, Jimmy was out drinking with people and then there were beer cans found there. So it makes you wonder, did they go out drinking and then he went and got Stacey and they were hanging out and something happened? This box of evidence that we're talking about still needs to be tested. It includes the cans, it includes just a lot, the belt, the murder weapon, the belt, clothing. There has been testing on the clothing. Some had Rodney's DNA on it. According to Rodney, it makes total sense that his DNA would be on her, in her, everything, that they had had an encounter the day before after midnight. So it fits in the timeline. It would make sense. His DNA is on her. So it comes down to whether or not you believe that he had an encounter with her prior and that he was not anywhere around her at that time. This is the part where it gets a little wonky, and I'm just going to leave it at this. There is questions about the officers that were involved. There was even an officer that was involved that subsequently killed himself. And it didn't make a lot of sense. This man had, I'm going to let you guys, Stephanie Harlow, I think, was the one who did the best breakdown of this whole portion. It seemed like he might know more about the case, or he might have been involved in some sort of a cover-up. This whole part of the possible cover-up is so hard to find and so hard to get like a what if, that it just makes it difficult for me to give you the whole synopsis of that situation. But it's just another part of it that doesn't make sense. These were friends. Something's going on wonky. And it could be as simple as they didn't do a good job in the investigation and they just don't want anyone to know. I think it's a lot bigger than that. I think they know what happened. I'm going to leave it there. I don't want to get in trouble. So I'm going to go on to freerodneyreed.com. These are the things that are the most important facts that I want you to know. This way I cover anything I might have forgotten to say. Just so you're clear, the DNA evidence that was collected, Rodney Reed is asserting that that was from a consensual relationship. That consensual relationship is possibly corroborated by his entire family, it appears, many friends of his, and a prior co-worker of Stacey's that she was currently working with. The case against Rodney has a lot of holes. The fact that if she was leaving for work at 3 o'clock in the morning and she was 35 miles away close to her work at the high school, how did that time out? They would have had a plan to meet. And if they were planning to meet, then that means they were probably having a consensual relationship. Why did he harm her? That would just lend to be that he was a perpetual harmer of people. And maybe that's the possibility, but it's kind of wonky. The other thing that was brought up is whether or not Fennell could have done it, because how would that have worked? She's there. How does he get home before he puts out the APB and before he gets there? There is questions about the timeline. So when her body was found, she was found face up. There is lividity on the front of her. Okay, we've done enough of these cases. You guys know what that means. That means that she would have had to have been face down and passed for a few hours for her blood to settle down on the front of her. She was found on her back. The blood should have all been pooled on the back of her, but it wasn't. There was lividity on the front of her. There was also a very, this was really interesting, and this was in the documentary, and it's in the Innocence Project. They did like a live stream. It's in that. And that's where I was watching it, and I really honed in on it. So there is a photo of her hands, and they're white in the tip, and then like the blood's pooling. Is that how like you see it? Is like when it goes down and then it's white? And he was explaining, no. What that is that means at the time of death and for a period of time that the person had their hand against something. And it creates these spots. And I'll try to put the photo up for you guys. If not, please, it's in the link down below. And he said that means that she was actually on her stomach and had her hand up against something. For example, in the floorboard of a vehicle possibly. But she had her hand up against a hard surface. And then she was flipped over and left where she was at. I just have to tell you, this makes all the sense in the world. I don't understand how she would have met Rodney at that place, followed him out there, leaving behind her earring, her apron, parts of her cup, half of her belt, gone out there, something happened, he harms her and leaves her there. But then he had to flip her again because that doesn't make sense. The vehicle being completely examined would have resolved this. I mean, we all are thinking that right now. Like if they had completely examined this vehicle, they could have confirmed that. Again, leading to, remember the liquidy substance that was there in the vehicle, that could have been from her. So it's like all of these things keep making more sense to go this way. There's also some things, so we're going to talk about Jimmy Fennell. They do go over him on the website. Jimmy was the main suspect at first, and there have been his friends and people that have come forward and have said after the fact he made a lot of inconsistent statements, and we're not very comfortable with him anymore. Then we think he might be a suspect as well. That being said, even though he was the original suspect, I just want to be very clear, their home was never searched as well, which is just so crazy because that was the last place she was seen alive. That is absolutely like normal protocol. Someone goes missing, you go into their home, and then if they're found murdered, you do a complete search of their home, of their vehicle, of everywhere that they've been looking for evidence. But that was not done. Cover up. There are also multiple witnesses. So we talked about people who corroborated the affair between Stacey and Rodney. So the witnesses we've discussed that have come forward and spoken out are his family and the coworker. There's other witnesses. There's witnesses that were coworkers and people that knew Jimmy that said he knew about the affair. He knew about it and he was pissed and he was mad about it. There was a friend who even said that they were having a barbecue one day and Stacey was at the pool, and he said that Jimmy literally said to him that he thinks his girlfriend is sleeping with a black guy. Okay. As a police officer, Jimmy Fennell had several accusations of being inappropriate. He was a mess. I will say, I can only imagine as a police officer, they probably get a lot of accusations. I'm sure some are completely wrong. So I'm not going to say that just because he has accusations that they're all true. I know that it can't all be true, but he had a lot and they were of a consistent nature. So eventually he was charged and pled guilty to kidnapping while on duty. Kidnapped a woman who had been involved in a dispute, kidnapped her and raped her. He was accused of this on another occasion. That case didn't move forward. But in this case, it moved forward and they believed her and they charged him and he admitted it and he pled guilty to that charge. That happened after Stacey. So how in the world do you, after your fiance has been kidnapped and raped and murdered, how in the world could you ever even get into a situation of being accused of that and plead guilty to it? I'm thinking that you have a history of it. I don't think that it's like, oh, I saw that, so now I want to go do that. No, you are a bad person and you were a bad person. I literally can't fathom how that could happen to your fiance and then you can go and do that and not think that people aren't going to think, well, shit, that makes sense. You did it before and you got away with it. Why aren't you going to do it again? And he's accused again of it. So it's not, this guy's a bad guy. He not only was accused of it, he admitted it. There were 3 forensic experts that testified in the original trial that have recanted. They have said we were wrong. We made a mistake. We are wrong on the time of death. That absolutely were wrong. They believe they've moved the timeline. So it's more plausible, absolutely, that she was killed around midnight. Or I've seen a couple of different. So we're just going to go with she was a couple hours earlier. So what would make sense is that Jimmy was out. He came home. Something happened between them. She was harmed. She was put into the vehicle. She was transported there. And then she was moved and put there. It also appeared, they said the underwear were obviously moved. It appears what they believe happened is that her clothes were changed. So she was taken out of the clothes that she had been in the day before when she had the encounter with Rodney. She was taken out of those clothes and her work clothes were put on her. What absolutely blows my mind is I'm just giving you all these crazy things that don't make sense. But there is one thing that I don't care if it is just so obvious. I don't care unless you've got like video evidence and this person saying, I did it, don't waste your time. I do not understand how in this world we even consider executing a person without testing the evidence. Test it. Say you can't get anything out of it. Fine. Test the evidence. I want to get behind you guys. I want to be firm, and I want to be like, you know what? That's their law. That's what's in place, and fight against the law, but it is what it is, and this is how it works. And until the laws change, that's how things are. I don't want to be that kind of person, but I mean, if that's what it is what it is. That's not what it is. Okay? We don't operate in a world where we kill someone without being 1,000% sure. I don't even understand. So there is a petition. I want you to sign it, please. I'm begging of you. Sign just so we can promote justice, so that we can promote that people have to have answers before we carry out something like that. Don't sign because you think he's innocent, because we don't know that yet. I mean, you might, but because if you sit and really dig and dig and dig, you might have a stronger opinion. That's fine. But don't sign for that reason. Sign for justice, that we need to take our time to look into things. That's what's important. We do not put someone to death with this many questions. Sign for the victim's family, even though they believe in that. I bless your heart. I'm fine with that. I understand why you believe. You probably know a lot more than we know. But there is a possibility, and you got to know, it's worth making sure she deserves that justice, that there is no questions about who did this to her, that everyone knows who did it, and that person is being handled, dealt with. There's justice. That's what's important for everyone involved. And Rodney's family needs to know. They need to know. They need to know that their family member, if he did this, they need to know. They need to know that they fought for him and tried to get him justice when he's a brutal murderer. Or they need to know that their family member told them the truth. This is important stuff. And leaving this with a question is not okay. It's not okay. So I encourage you to sign. They're on the website. There's lots of things that they encourage you to do. You can make phone calls. You can tweet. You can get involved. I appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart. I've been talking to my kids a lot lately. I don't know how many times a day I say I have questions. When I hear things, I have questions, and I have questions, and I encourage you guys to ask those questions. Get involved. No more. Be better and do better. I love you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for watching my videos. I say this all the time. Do me a favor. Hug your babies. Hug your loves. Life is literally precious. Enjoy every minute of every day. Life is priceless. So I love you guys, and I'll see you in my next video.